Hey, boys and girls. Today, if you missed the Zoom class, I hope you're watching this. And so we're going to talk about realistic fiction today and how those stories often are about experiences that we can easily relate to. When we read realistic fiction, we can develop different types of connections to the text. Today we're going to revisit our story, Jalapeno Bagels, and we're going to write 3 responses. We're going to write a text-to-self connection, a text-to-world connection, and a text-to-text connection for Pablo's story. Let's get started. Realistic fiction stories can make us think of our own lives or the world we know. When we write something, when we read something in a story that makes us think about our own lives, we're making a text-to-self connection. Likewise, when we think about the world we know, this is a text-to-world connection. And when we think about the similarities between this text and another text, then we call this a text-to-text connection. So in your notebook today, we're going to make our own anchor chart. And so in my notebook today, let me see if I can get myself centered. There we go. I don't have my hover cam at home. All right, so we did a text-to-self connection. So I drew a picture of the text on the left, like my little e-reader or maybe a book. And then I drew myself on the right. And then on the next one, we came about halfway down, and we're going to do our text-to-world connection. All right, so on the text-to-world, I don't want you to just think about that being just like the planetary place that we live, like the physical Earth. But I want you to think about the world as being a little bit more broader term. For example, it could be your neighborhood, your community, the people in your community. It could be, the world could be ideas that are out there, things people are talking about, information that's spreading, things that are related to the world, not the actual physical world. And so we're going to talk a lot about a word today called culture. And so that's a big part of our text-to-world connection today. And last but not least, we have our text-to-text connection. And we're going to think about text being very broad too. And so we have whatever we're reading on the left, like our daily reading book on the left. But on the right, I expanded the meaning of text because for some of us, it might be like a scholastic news article. It may be something we read online. It could be, from an e-reader. It could be another book, like another daily read book. And I'm going to expand this out a little bit even to movies. So really, I'm thinking about text as being any kind of media. That media, remember we talked about media being all those sources of information that surround us. So we're going to broaden that meaning of text to text. And so we're going to think about text being not just your daily reading, but kind of expand that out a little bit. Okay, so we're going to read Jalapeno Bagels again today, and we're going to stop and make some connections. And while I'm going to share my connections, I want you to think about your connections to the story as well. All right. What should I bring to school on Monday for International Day? I asked my mother. My teacher told us to bring something from our culture. Well, you could bring a treat from our panaderia, she suggests. Panaderia is what Mama calls our bakery. Help us bake on Sunday. Then you can pick out whatever you want. It's a deal, I tell her. I like helping at the bakery. It's warm there and everything smells so good. Early Sunday morning, when it is still dark, my mother wakes me up. Pablo, it is time to go to work, she says. We walk down the street to the bakery. My father turns on the lights. My mother turns on the ovens. She gets out pans and ingredients for pan dulce. Pan dulce is Mexican sweet bread. I help my mother mix and knead the dough. She shapes rolls and loaves of bread and slides them into the oven. People tell her she makes the best pan dulce in town. Maybe I'll bring pan dulce to school, I tell her. So I'm going to stop right there. So we have a family working together on a school project. Well, I automatically think of school projects that I did when I was a little girl, think traditions and things that I shared, like especially around Christmas time when we think about all of our family traditions. I think about things as a teacher that I've asked my students to do, where they do projects, and then maybe the kids have a hard time thinking about what they want to share. I think about you guys sometimes when you have writing projects and you have a hard time deciding what you want to write about. And then last but not least, I think about bread that I've eaten in other countries. And so the one I remember is on my trip to Denmark, we had a Danish food called smørrebrød. And so it's a little piece of bread and it had cream cheese on it and they had lots and lots of different toppings. And so I think about that bread that I've eaten in other places. And so those are some of my text to self connections. Today in class, we discovered that that's probably the easiest kind of connection to make. Let's read on. Next, we make the empanadas de calabaza, pumpkin turnovers. I'm in charge of spooning the pumpkin filling. Mama folds the dough in half and presses the edges with a fork. She bakes them until they are flaky and golden brown. Some customers come to our bakery just for her turnovers. Maybe I'll bring empanadas de calabaza instead. Oh, you'll figure it out, she says. Ready to make chango bars? Chango means monkey man. Mama lets me pour in the chocolate chips and nuts. When she's not looking, I pour in extra chocolate chips. I could bring chango bars, they're my favorite dessert. Mine too, says Mama, and this batch should be especially good. I put in extra chips. They both put in extra chips. I bet they're going to be really chocolatey. I think I would try those. My father calls from the back room. Pablo, come and help me with the bagels. Papa speaks English and Yiddish. He learned Yiddish from his family in New York City. I know some words too. Bubba means grandmother. He uses my Bubba's recipe to make the bagels. First he makes the dough in a big metal bowl. Then he rolls it out in a long rope shape. He cuts off pieces and shows me how to connect the ends of the circle. We put the circles on the tray where they sit and rise. While we're waiting, my father makes challah, Jewish braided bread. He lets me practice braiding challah dough at my own counter. It's a lot like braiding hair. The customers say it is almost too beautiful to eat. Maybe I'll bring a loaf of challah to school, I tell Papa, and he smiles. When the bagel dough has risen, he boils the bagels in a huge pot of water and fishes them out with a long slotted spoon. I sprinkle poppy seeds and sesame seeds, and then they go in the oven. Maybe I could bring sesame seed bagels with cream cheese. No lox? Lox is smoked salmon. My father's favorite bagel is pumpernickel with a smear of cream cheese and lox. I crinkle my nose. Lox tastes like fish. Jam is better. My mother joins us and helps my father make another batch of bagels, jalapeno bagels. My parents use their own special recipe. While Papa kneads the dough and Mama chops the jalapeno chilies, she tosses them in the dough and adds dried red peppers. We roll, cut, make circles, let them rise. I can't wait until they are done because I'm getting hungry. All right, so let's think about a text to world connection. We have obviously some foods from our Mexican culture and also things from their Jewish culture, the bagels and the foods that they eat. I'm also hearing lots of language, words from other languages. And so that helps me feel like culture is an important part of this book. And so when I make a text to world connection, I want to think about why is learning about culture so important and how can I learn more about cultures? And so I might connect this to maybe if I've ever been to a cultural fair where they have lots of international things, or if I've been to a restaurant where I eat a food from a different country. Um, I know in town we have the Greek festival, and there's usually other countries. Usually, there's usually all different kinds of holiday or different groups that make lots of foods and make lots of, show dances and folk clothing and things like that. So when we learn about other people's culture, it's important. We want to share that. It feels good to share what we like from our culture with others so that they in turn will like it too. And it just makes us part of a whole global community. And so that would be my world to text connection. And let's finish up with a text to text connection. All right, have you decided what you're going to bring to school, said Mama? It's hard to choose. Everything is so good. I look at Papa, except for Lox. He does not like that fish. You should decide before we open, warns Mama, or else our customers will be buying up everything. I walk past all the sweetbreads, Chango bars, and bagels. I think about my mother and my father and all the different things they make in the bakery. And suddenly, I know exactly what I'm going to bring. Jalapeno bagels, I tell my parents, and I'll spread them with cream cheese and jam. Why jalapeno bagels? Asked Papa. Because they're a mixture of both of you, just like me. So if I thought about a text-to-text connection, one book I thought of is a nonfiction book that I used to read to my first graders, and it was called Bread, Bread, Bread. And it was all different kinds of breads, different ingredients, different shapes and sizes and colors of bread, but every culture has bread. And so that was my nonfiction connection to text. And then I also thought about some books I enjoyed as a fourth grader, the Little House on the Prairie books, and how that family always came together and had food at the center of their life and working together as a family and just trying to survive in that pioneer lifestyle. And so I thought about that little family and how they work together. All right, so now it's your turn. So in your reader's notebook, make yourself an anchor chart like this. If you need to pause the video, pause so you can copy it down. Don't forget to do the pictures. There was a lot of questions about the pictures today, and pictures are really good for helping us connect our brain to our memory. So we want to connect that learning so that it gets stored in our long-term memory and we don't forget about it. Okay, so now that you have that, you're going to actually, in the spaces that we left, you're going to write a text to self connection, a text to world connection, and a text to text connection. And you can use the book that you're reading in class, or if you want to head over to Epic and use the Epic library, or if you have some picture books in your house that would make some good holiday connections, that would be a good book to use. You don't have to use your chapter book, but you can if you want to. And so think about some picture books or some Epic books. Needs to be fiction, can't be nonfiction for this assignment. So think about maybe picking out a good realistic fiction book and testing out making connections to text. And don't forget to post a picture if you weren't in the Zoom so I can give you credit for today. All right, have a good evening, and I'll see you soon.